What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nazi with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And you know I had to go big for the playoffs, right? For the Washington football team making the playoffs for the first time since the 2015 season, I believe. We got two big-time guests tonight. We have Louie T, the one and only, the pioneer in the Washington football team YouTube community. And I appreciate you, Louie, for being on the channel. We also have John Z Sports. A very good radio personality in the Chicago sports scene as well as the national sports scene. So I'm just glad that you guys were able to take the time out of your nights to join me on this stream, especially in these trying times. And before diving into the questions, I do want to say, it's a very difficult time, very difficult situation today for everyone, especially in the DMV community. We all saw what happened in DC with the insurrection that was caused on the Capitol and everything that went with that. The one woman who actually died because of her injuries caused in the insurrection. And, again, it's very troubling. A lot of people thought, maybe I might not have the stream tonight. But like Louis said before we went on camera, this is the necessary distraction that we all need at this point. We all want to talk about playoff football. And I think this is the best way to do it with two big-time guests. And with that being said, I do want to dive into the questions. And the first question that I have for both of you tonight, either one could go first, is what do you make of Coach Pederson's decision on Sunday night and Joe Judge's comments on Monday night, essentially not ever tanking as long as he's the coach of the Giants?
You can go ahead first, John. You can go ahead.
All right. Oh, I appreciate the floor. I know it's a primetime game, and I think that's why there was a lot of issue with the decision made by Coach Pederson. But at the end of the day, he wants to see what else he has, and that's the official explanation. I don't know if that's true or not, but let the guy do it. They're out of the playoffs. And if you're the New York Giants and you're mad because you went 6-10 and you feel that the division was taken away from you by Philadelphia, you have other issues, okay? You went 6-10. You do not deserve to be in the playoffs. The worst team in NFL history to make it, the Seahawks and now the Washington football team at 7-9. If you lose 10 games, there is no reason why you should be anywhere near playoff football. So, that decision, I understand some people call it Bush League. I get the whole argument behind it. But at the end of the day, if you're New York, you can't be mad about losing 10 games and missing the playoffs. That's ludicrous to me.
I couldn't agree with you more, John. Like, at this point, and even Logan Ryan said, look, we can't be mad at the Eagles. We won 6 games. Like, you want to get in, you got to win more games. And that's really what it boils down to. I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that Doug Pederson did try to win the game initially. And I think it was when Jalen Hurts didn't convert that 4th down. He had an open receiver and skipped it to him. That was the moment in his mind. He said, okay, I gave it a run. All right, I'm going to see what Nate Sudfeld, and he knows what Nate Sudfeld was going to do. He knew he wasn't going to win the game. And in his mind, he starts thinking, 6 or 9? Which one do I want? Which one gives me a better chance to keep this job after next year? 6 or 9? And I don't know what he's thinking at the quarterback position. There's a rumor out there now that Wentz may be able to salvage his career in Philadelphia. I don't believe that one bit, but we'll see what happens there. I don't think they believe in Jalen Hurts as their guy, because if you do, you don't take him out of that ball game, in my mind at least. So I think they drafted him to be a backup behind Wentz. I think they may be looking for their future quarterback of the franchise at number 6. We'll see what they decide to do. But at the end of the day, he made a decision that he thought was in the best interest of his franchise. He doesn't owe anything to anyone out there. And so he made the decision. He was okay. Now, his players didn't sound like they were okay with it. And at the end of the day,
Kelsey did clear some things up.
And that's good, because Miles Sanders came out and said that everyone was confused by the decision. You could see the linemen on the sidelines. They weren't happy about the decision. And look, when you go out there and you put in the time during the week and you're out there sweating, busting your ass for the entire game, and your coach decides to make a decision, he goes rogue and takes the guy out that's going to give you the best chance to win. That's kind of tough to swallow if you're out there giving it your all. So I think he does have to, get those guys in the locker room to understand that he was trying to still win the game. You don't want to lose the locker room, but at the end of the day, he did what he thought was best for his franchise, and he doesn't owe anybody an explanation, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys' points. I do want to say that the idea out there, especially in the mainstream media, about Doug Pederson and his decision being, evidence of him just doing an outright tank job on the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't believe that. I think, like Louis said, he did what was best for his team, at least what he believed was best. And I think he wanted to see what he had between the two quarterbacks. Again, like Louis said, Jalen Hurts, a lot of people already assume that he's going to be the guy in Philly, but Doug Pederson wanted to figure things out. And, we did see the 2 rushing touchdowns that Jalen Hurts had earlier in the game, but a lot of people forget that he wasn't pretty efficient when it came to the passing game. And, again, it's not just outright tanking when you make the move to bench him, right? It's sort of performance-based as well. So
let me say one more thing. On my podcast, I brought this up. And this is the thing that really irked me with this whole situation is that I think John made a great point that it's on prime time, so everybody was watching. It was the final game, 256 of the NFL season. All eyes were on that game. If we lose, Washington loses, the Giants get in. So there was a little bit at stake. But how about what Jacksonville has been doing all year? I brought that up. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Everybody knows Gardner Minshew gives them the best chance to win. Am I not right? Like, come on. We know what Mike Glennon is in this league, okay? He's been on 3 different teams, and every time he started, that team has gotten the number 1 pick in the draft. So we know what Mike Glennon is, and they decided that Glennon was a better option than Gardner Minshew. Come on now. I'm not saying Gardner Minshew is the next Tom Brady or anything like that.
Yeah.
But Gardner Minshew is the best option Jacksonville has to win on a weekly basis, and they totally decided that we're not trying to win. We're going to be competitive, but we're not trying to win because if we really wanted to win, we put Gardner Minshew in the game. Like, come on, give me a break.
And also, it probably tells you all you need to know because next year when they probably draft either Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence, they're probably going to start Minshew right away, right? Like he's probably going to be their stopgap quarterback, right? Before one of the 2 rookie quarterbacks ends up starting, or even before that, maybe just be a total like veteran presence for that young quarterback. So I definitely agree with you there. They've been tanking the entire season. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet about, I believe it was after the week 1 win that their official Twitter account basically said that they weren't done yet, right? They weren't done winning. They weren't done with the season. And ultimately they finished 1-15. So
they weren't done.
They were done. They were done. But it was a little funny seeing that today, but I do want to move on though from Coach Pederson's decision and move towards the quarterback situation right now in Washington. And I specifically want to dive into Coach Rivera's comments yesterday about considering whether to rotate the QBs that we have right now, Alex Smith and Taylor Heinicke. And what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think we should perhaps just start one or the other, or do you think it's good that we're at least considering rotating the guys in? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
So I can tell you what I kind of gathered from what Rivera was trying to say. So this isn't hey, you get 2 possessions, you get 2 possessions. Like, it's not like what I was watching Oregon do, a week ago, where they got one guy in here, and he goes down the field, and then the next guy comes in. Like, we're not rotating quarterbacks in that regard. It's Alex even said this himself, and he reiterated it again today in his presser that I felt good when I started the game. And you could see it. I mean, the opening possession was beautiful. He was 4 of 4 on 3rd down, took us right down the field. We scored a touchdown. You then go the end of the first half, and he does it again. And then you could see it was a different guy in the second half. He was a lot less decisive, other than when he felt like, I got to get the hell out of here because I don't want to stand in the pocket. Yeah. And he can't move. So he said it tightened up on him. He had to gut it out. And I think what Rivera is saying is that, and when you watch the film, and I watched the film yesterday and I broke it down, and when you watch it, you say, man, he left a lot on the field. And it's because it became less about standing in there and staring down the gun barrel and going through his progressions and getting the ball where it needed to go, and more about self-preservation. All right, I can't stand back here because I can't defend myself. And the Eagles did a good job of getting a little bit of pressure. So I think what Ron is saying is, hey, we'll go with Alex early because we think he's going to be able to give us something. Mm-hmm. But the minute I feel like, and I'm going to go to Alex, and I need him to be honest with me, it's tightening up. Doesn't look like he can move back there, man. I'm going to have to go to Taylor Heinicke for the remainder of this game, man. Thanks. It's almost like that that skip, going over to that pitcher after 5 1/3 in the playoff game and saying, look, man, I really appreciate what you just did for me, but I got to go to the pen. And it's kind of going to be that same kind of feeling, I think. If he sees any kind of regression from Alex in the game, I think he's going to make the move sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, we know historically teams that use 2 quarterbacks in a season or 2 quarterbacks in a game, rather, they don't usually succeed. So I think what you're saying is pretty much correct. You don't want to just go back and forth all game. The offense won't get a rhythm. You're going to definitely lose the game without question. Alex Smith is the starter. Whether people like it or not, for some reason, the Washington football team wins when Alex Smith is behind center. I don't know if that's an indictment on how the team plays under him or if it's, hey, he's a really good quarterback, whatever it might be. The point is they win when he plays. He's also started 7 playoff games before. He's been there many times. He's been there in San Francisco, been there in KC. Now he's going to be there with Washington. He has the experience. He is an okay quarterback. He's a serviceable NFL quarterback without question. Why not give him the opportunity? And I will say this, don't shorten his leash too much. Don't put that in his head. Here in Chicago, we talk about Mitchell Trubisky all the time and leash being shortened and him always being worried about, is this the one play I make that will pull me out of the game? Right. Don't send that message to Alex Smith, because eventually what you're going to get is a passive quarterback, especially in the second half. Maybe the game's close. Maybe he
but he's already passive.
I know, but he'll be even more passive. Right. And then you'll really be wondering, well, what could we do offensively to generate some points? And it's a playoff game. It's win or go home. So I think what you have to do is make sure you establish the mindset for Alex Smith's sake. Say, hey, your leash will be medium. I don't want you to think it's going to be a short leash, or if you make one mistake, you're out of here. But at the same time, things really go downhill, and it's still early on, and we think we still have a chance to come back with Taylor Heinicke. We may or may not make that move. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
I would say I emphatically agree about John's point in regards to Alex Smith's psyche and making sure that, he's not too pressed to really do well in this game, right? With all the attention about rotating quarterbacks and stuff. But I would say that for most other quarterbacks, but I feel like Alex Smith is just a whole different beast. I feel like his psyche won't really be phased by any sort of QB competition or anything, because he's been benched multiple times throughout his career for young quarterbacks, and I don't think at this point, right, I don't think he's worried too much about it, right? He's playing the game of football after almost 2 years of not playing the game, of the game being taken away from him. So I don't think we should worry too much about that. But I will say, yesterday I did actually call into 106.7 right after the news, and I think the key word here, guys, is considering, right? I think I'm all for the idea of potentially having Heinicke play some snaps in this game, because we've seen over the last couple of weeks, really the last couple of months, even on the 4-game winning streak, right, when we were 5-1 with Alex Smith, or 5-game winning streak, we've seen that Alex Smith hasn't really produced, right? And a lot of people want to point out that Alex Smith, right, he at least gives you that steady presence in the huddle and gives you that veteran leadership that we all want to see out of the quarterback position. And while I agree with that, right, I agree that he should outright be the comeback player of the year in the 2020 NFL season. I just feel like he's actually kind of been a little bit more turnover prone this year than in previous years. And we've seen that with his stat line, right? 6 touchdowns, 8 picks. And I get last week, 2 of the picks, you couldn't really blame him, right? One time his receiver fell down. The other time it was just a monster play on that defense. But you could kind of say that with other quarterbacks as well. And also with the J.D. McKissic throw, wasn't really a smart idea to throw it to McKissic right there out in the flat when he had a defensive back just full steam coming right at him right after. So I personally, again, Heinicke, I know it was limited sample size, 1 quarter against Carolina Panthers, although it wasn't really much of a they were blitzing. It wasn't like they were, not really putting in all their defensive horses and really playing until the end of the game. They were blitzing a bunch, but I get it, 1 quarter, very small sample size, but I did like what I saw out of him, and I think our offense performed better in that 1 quarter alone than it did throughout the year, no matter the quarterback, whether it be Haskins, Allen, or Smith. So I'm all for the idea of considering rotating the quarterbacks, although I would rather like to see just 1 quarterback be the quarterback for the entire game because, as John mentioned, it doesn't usually work out too well when it comes to rotating guys.
It doesn't. And I honestly don't see them doing it. It's if Alex can go and he can go the entire game, he's going to play the whole game. But if he can't, that's when you'll see multiple quarterbacks playing the game. It
might just be gamesmanship, right? Like that's I know
absolutely. I mean, you want them preparing for both guys. I mean, even though there's not a lot to prepare for, with Heinicke because you haven't seen a lot on him. I mean, you still want that out there.
Yeah. I do want to shout out all the people in the chat right now. Paul, our good friend, our roommate last year. Appreciate the support. Gopi, Andrew, everyone, King Sean, appreciate it, guys. As always, Brandon, I see you as one of the earliest guys in the chat. I do want to move on though to the game, the Washington versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, the playoff game at FedEx Field, the first time that's happened in the last, I believe, 6 years now, and since the 2015 season when we actually played with Kirk Cousins as the starting quarterback at the time. And I was wondering, do you guys think that Washington has enough firepower first to keep up with the Bucs offense on Saturday night? Do you think we have enough horses to really put up some points?
Honestly, that's not the right question to ask. We already know the answer to that. The question is, can we bring them down to our level?
Yeah.
We already know what kind of game this has to be. If you're talking in terms of Tampa, this has to look exactly like the Tampa-Chicago game from a Thursday night early in the season. If we're talking from a Redskins or a Washington perspective, it looks like the Steelers game, 23-17. The Bucs can't score 24 or more. They scored 24. We can't get past 24 points.
Yeah.
So anything above 24, you can go ahead and cancel Christmas. 23 is as high as we go. Haven't been higher than 23, I think, since don't quote me on this, but since the Dallas game on Thanksgiving. Like, we don't score a bunch of points. It's not who we are. We have to hold them to 20 or less if we want to win this football game. And it's really simple. We know the recipe. We know what we have to do. Can we go out and execute? Can we get a couple of breaks? Can we get a drop pass on the third down? Can we get a Brady overthrow? Again, these are all things that you're hoping go in your favor. But you got to pressure him first, like Chicago did early in that game. You got to hit him early and often, let him know you're going to be around because we know you can rattle Brady's cage. But if he gets comfortable and gets into a rhythm, forget about it.
I agree. The Chicago game, obviously, me being in Chicago, I watched it. I covered that extensively on my channel, on my radio show. Mm-hmm. What the Bears did is intimidation. Mm-hmm. Every second, Tom Brady was looking behind him or looking in front of him, worried about somebody trying to take him down. And eventually, you saw it on his face. You saw the facial expressions. You knew he was terrorized. He was worried for the rest of the game. I mean, the guy lost count of how many downs there were.
Exactly. I was going to say that.
Because he was that worried about Khalil Mack dropping him to the ground. That's what the Washington football team needs to do. You need to be all over him, in his head right away. Additionally, control the run game. Make sure that Ronald Jones does not carry the ball for a lot of yards. The guy averages 5 yards per carry. Fournette only averages 3.8, which is positive, at least for Washington's case. But make sure you plug up Ronald Jones, force Brady to try and throw the football. Then if you have a good pass rush, which Washington does, you can terrorize him and really just, take over when it comes to Tampa Bay's offense. And Louis, you brought up a great point at the very beginning. You have to make sure that the defense will limit Tampa Bay's offense and have it play down to the Washington football team's level because we know what the Washington football team is. They don't have a 1,000-yard rusher. They got just tons of different guys and tons of different things going on offensively. 4 different quarterbacks have played. What they need to do is to make sure that Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, 40-plus touchdowns, bring that all the way down to Washington's level, and they could come away with the win. I can see it. There is a path to victory.
Right.
Yeah, definitely agree. I will say, though, in terms of our offense going up against that Buccaneers defense, the only shot we have to score points is really through the air. The Bucs rush defense is arguably the best in the league. And their pass defense actually isn't all that. I believe they were 28th or 29th in passing yards allowed or something like that. And I think, we are pretty limited when it comes to the quarterbacks, whether it be Alex Smith being trotted out there or Taylor Heinicke, but hopefully our receivers, Terry McLaurin, gets healthy, right, after another week of practices, another week of rest, and hopefully we can put up some points with another Terry McLaurin touchdown, or maybe even Cam Sims getting more involved. Tony Gibson through the air, J.D. McKissick as always, right, with the check down king that is Alex Smith. So hopefully we can get some things going through the air with all those pieces that we have. Also Logan Thomas, who can forget, the arguably the best offseason signing that we've had, right? 600 plus yards, 6 touchdowns, I believe, and should have been in the Pro Bowl, but wasn't. But he's still a great threat on that offense, and it's still going to be tough, right? They have a guy like Devin White in their linebacker core that has 9 sacks at the middle linebacker position, which is almost unheard of. It's absolutely berserk. And again, they do have pieces in their secondary. They have a guy like Carlton Davis, who hasn't been too bad this year. They have Jason Pierre-Paul, who actually has 9 sacks on the season. So I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but
it's funny because every guy that you just named, Carlton Davis is dealing with a groin, JPP is dealing with the knee, and Devin White's not even playing. So we're catching them. I mean, I'm not saying we're catching them at a great time, because that offense is really humming right now. They've been playing exceptional football down the stretch, but they got some questions on that defense. I'm not afraid of their defense. I'll tell you that. But, I mean, do we have the ability to take advantage of it is another question for another day.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And in terms of our defense, you guys already hit the nail on its head. It's all about our pass rush. Tom Brady has shown in the past, especially in the playoffs, to really struggle against NFC East pass rushers, very good NFC East pass rushers. And, we've seen that with the Giants, we've seen that with the Eagles. Hopefully Washington could really force the pressure on Tom Brady throughout the game and get a couple of sacks and really make Tom Brady uncomfortable, like John said, was the case when they played against the Bears earlier in the season. But I do want to go back to the prior question about the quarterbacks, because Roger Smith does bring up a good point here about Taylor Heinicke and his ability to potentially open up the playbook more if he does start for the Washington football team this week. And I was wondering, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you put too much stock into Taylor Heinicke potentially, again, opening up the playbook and really forcing the ball down the field more? What are you guys' thoughts on that notion?
Nah, I don't really too much subscribe to that for this reason. Scott Turner stepped up to the mic today and he said, look, all 3 of our quarterbacks, we feel confident. He's supposed to say that. I mean, he's obviously feels more confident in Alex Smith than he does Taylor Heinicke, and more confident in Taylor Heinicke than he does Steven Montez. But he said, look, the plays aren't going to change. The playbook isn't going to open up more for one guy than the other, which is also false, because if Steven Montez gets in there, obviously he knows much less than Heinicke nor Alex Smith. But at the end of the day, the only thing that Taylor Heinicke really offers you adverse to Alex Smith is that he can use his legs. He can extend plays. And he did show us that he's not afraid nor bashful to take shots down the field. But at the same time, you don't want him forcing it if it's not there. He's going to extend plays with his legs. That's what we're missing with the offense. That's what Kyle Allen brought to the table. That's what Alex used to be able to do. And that's what Taylor Heinicke was able to do in limited play against Carolina. So to me, the biggest benefit of having him in there is the fact that he has wheels and he's not afraid to use them.
I just go back to the experience thing. I mean, Alex Smith has played 7 playoff games. Taylor Heinicke's played a quarter, and you don't really know what you're going to get out of him in a playoff atmosphere, win or go home against Tom freaking Brady.
Exactly.
That's what I go back to. Alex Smith, you could say he's a bad quarterback, but he's been around the game a long damn time. He's been around since, 2006, 2007. He's seen it all. He's played for 15 plus years. I'd rather have a seasoned veteran, a guy who's played 7 playoff games in this game against Tom Brady, the GOAT, versus someone like Heinicke who's played only 1 quarter. He could stink it up completely. Then what's going to happen?
And that's what I've been trying to explain to fans. But see, we're so scarred as a fan base that the first thing that looks shiny, that runs across the screen, oh my God, that's it. That's the guy. And I'm like,
craving for good quarterback play.
That's the problem, is that we're so starved that anything tastes good right now. You could toss anything in front of us, dog food. Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. I'm like, guys, he could go out and throw 3 picks in the first half. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. They think he's the next best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, I'd much rather deal with the devil I know than the devil I don't know. I know what Alex Smith is going to give me. It may not be much, but we've shown that we can win with this formula. You know, I understand if Alex can't do it, I'm all for getting him out of there. And look, you don't have any recourse at that point. You need to go to Taylor Heinicke at that point. But until Alex gets to that point, I want him in there. That's how I felt, and that's how I'm going to continue to feel.
100% agree. I mean, you know, Alex Smith is known to not turn over the football, to be a good game manager, and to win football games. Alex Smith has a winning record as a quarterback. He's been around for a long time. He's had success in San Francisco, had success in KC, and he's had general success in Washington, even though many people may not want to hear that. It's true. The record shows it. And I know this year he's had issues with turning over the football, but in a playoff game like this, he's not going to take amazing overarching shots downfield. He's going to make sure to keep it 5-10 yards, move the offense. They win under Alex Smith. I don't see why you wouldn't play him in a game like this. You want to give yourself the best chance to win. It's a win-or-go-home game. Yep. Alex Smith, statistically and realistically, although it may pain many people to hear this, gives the Washington football team the best chance to win today. Yep. And until there's a replacement, until there's another draft pick, free agent signing come next year, this is what you have. Just like you're in Chicago. This is what the Bears have. Mitchell Trubisky. You may like him. You may hate him. You may hate his guts. You may want him gone. But this is what you have in the moment. So you might as well make the best of it and see what you can do.
Right.
I mean, on this Alex Smith theme, do you guys think that Alex Smith potentially will be back here in the Washington football team next year? Do you think he'll be the starter week 1? Do you think he'll at least compete for the starting position? Or, you know, he does have a contract where I believe we could cut him in the offseason and save some money. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think Smith will be here for at least another year?
For me, it's all about health. Today in his presser, he said, you know, after the season's done, that's when he'll take some time to get away and he'll make a decision with his family as to what his next move will be. And I really do think it boils down to, like, let's just look at it from this standpoint. This is what I've done to kind of simplify it. If the calf muscle injury never takes place, are we having this conversation about Alex Smith being back next year? Probably not, because I think he would have been a guy that they would have wanted back next season had he just remained healthy. You know, we had won, 4 in a row, and he was playing good football. And then the injury happens, and now everything's kind of in flux right now. I think it's just really down to, does he want to do this anymore? You know, is it still fun? And he answered that today. He said, yeah, it's still fun. You can't replicate the adrenaline that comes with playing the game of football. And you hear guys say that all the time, you know, when they're, you know, at the twilight of their career, like, and when they step away, like, you can't replicate this. I don't think he wants to stop, but if his body is telling him something else, then it may be time for him to give it up. But I think Washington wouldn't mind having him back. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see what the offseason brings, because I still don't fully know what they're thinking is the long-term solution at the quarterback position. They could go out and trade for a veteran this offseason, and if they do that, Alex is gone. You know what I mean? If they go and they draft a young guy and they don't go after anyone and pursue anyone in free agency, then the likelihood is Alex is back. You know, and obviously you still got Kyle Allen out there that they, you know, signed to traded for, and he had 1 year left. What do they do with him? You know, he could be their veteran for all we know. So it's a really convoluted situation. It's complex right now. In the moment, it feels like this is it for him. But, you know, a whole offseason, he feels good again. Who knows?
I think it'd be wise to keep him either way, and here's why. I mean, even if they bring in some veteran quarterbacks, he would become one of the best backups in the NFL by default, I think. The guy has a proven track record. You know, if let's assume he's perfectly healthy, he's one of the best backups in the NFL. If they draft somebody, Alex Smith, I think, is still going to start week 1. And I think, you know, Dwayne Haskins, for what it's worth, whatever he did, I think the team itself and the franchise learned a lesson there to maybe not rush a guy. Let's try and let him learn a little bit. Let's put him behind a veteran. Let's see what he can do. So I think that almost traumatized the team in a way, to a sense now where if they go out and draft somebody, unless it's Trevor Lawrence and they know he's going to be great, he probably isn't going to start week 1, the guy they drafted. So I say either way, keep him around. I think it'd be wise for them to keep him for one more year and just see what he offers. He's either going to be the best backup in the NFL or he's going to be your week 1 starter. I don't see any real downside in keeping him, especially as Nati mentioned, you can cut into his contract too and make it work for next year with the salary cap.
Yeah. I personally, unless he will be competing with someone, potentially a young quarterback that we draft in the offseason for that starting spot for week 1. Unless that sort of situation happens, right? Like Louis said this, if we go after maybe a guy like Matthew Stafford or even a guy like Matt Ryan, however unlikely that is, like if we do that, I just think that Alex Smith should not be on the Washington football team because of the fact that he already has a $22+ million cap hit next year. And for the type of production that he's getting, I know everybody talks about it, the veteran leadership, the veteran presence, the mentorship, all that. I get it. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to building a team that will be in contention for years to come, you don't want to tie up too much money to a backup quarterback. And $20+ million for a backup is a little pricey, but
that's not a little pricey. That is pricey. Okay? There's no little about it. I mean,
yeah,
there's no little about it. That's pricey. And everything you just said, if you trade for a veteran, you don't need Alex because that veteran is going to provide all of those things you just mentioned. The veteran leadership, all of those things that you're referencing. That's why Alex is here, because he provides those things. Right now, we're a very young team. We're one of the youngest in the league. So you need, veterans sprinkled throughout the roster, like a Thomas Davis, even though he's not contributing. You need those guys because these young guys don't know how to go about this. They don't know how to navigate, a 17-week season and how to keep your body fresh and all of those things, how to prepare. That's what Alex Smith was there for. You know what I mean? Even when he wasn't playing. So you bring a veteran in, Alex doesn't have to do those things. You don't need him. And by the way, if you bring in one of those guys you mentioned, those cap numbers are huge.
Exactly.
So you're eating those contracts. You can't afford to have $50-some-odd million tied into the quarterback position. You just can't. You re-sign Kyle Allen in that instance as a backup. That's not going to cost you very much money. And then you have your young, a young guy if you want, or you just have Kyle Allen there, and then Steven Montez is a guy that's probably not dressing on most weeks.
I think it does depend, though. Like, for example, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's say the Washington football team goes out and signs Mitch Trubisky. Seriously. At that point, I would not get rid of Alex Smith just yet. But if they go out and trade for Carson Wentz, I still wouldn't get rid of Alex Smith just yet. It does depend on the caliber of the quarterback you're getting. If they get Matt Ryan, I understand. Let him go. If they get Matthew Stafford, established veteran, let him go. But if you're getting a guy who's kind of on the edge, who's still trying to prove himself in his own right, it would be wise to keep him around, whether he's competing for the starting job or backing up just in case.
That's fair. That's fair. I will say this, though, going back to the Kyle Allen point that Louis had, I believe. I will say this. I think the team's actually higher on Kyle Allen than Alex Smith. I think Ron Rivera's comments earlier in the week were sort of telling on that idea because he mentioned how I believe a reporter asked him, if Alex Smith wasn't starting, would the Washington football team still be in the position that they are, vying for a playoff spot, ultimately accomplishing, that playoff spot? And his response to that was, yeah, if Kyle Allen was starting, pretty much. And I just think those comments are very much telling. And Kyle Allen, we're talking about cap hits, doesn't have too much of a cap hit, and is definitely an easy guy that we could keep around next year and potentially could give, even though he is a younger guy, potentially give some sort of veteran leadership in that quarterback room next year if we do decide to go with the young quarterback in the draft in 2021 draft. But it's going to be interesting. Louis T mentioned this. The offseason has a lot in store for this Washington football team. We really don't know what the team wants to do at the quarterback position. Ron Rivera has done different things in the past, and we can't really recall, pinpoint certain things and think that, they're going to happen in DC. So it's going to be interesting, but I do want to pivot a little bit away from the quarterback position and go back to the Washington versus Bucks matchup. I do want to ask you, who do you guys think will actually win the matchup? And can you give me a score prediction as well?
I'm gonna save mine for Friday. That's gonna be on my Friday show.
Okay, that's
so
fair.
I don't want to give it away right now, but I will tell you, as John alluded to, we got a shot, man. I
Yeah.
really believe we got a shot. And nobody else seems to think so, which bodes well for us.
You know, you do have paths to victory. Washington, without question, is paths to victory. I am just a bit worried about Tom Brady. You know, he has the experience. And I think in a game like this, it could come out and it could hurt Washington if they're not on their game defensively or if they're not rushing him as well as they should be. My pick is going to be Tampa, but not by much. I'm going to say 21-17 Tampa wins. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think closer than people think. A lot of people look at the records and they say, oh, my gosh, Bucks by 40. That's not going to be the case. This is going to be one of those sloppy back and forth games. It's going to be close throughout, always one possession. But I think in the end, Tom Brady, inside the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter, pulls something out of his butt and ends up winning it. That said, either way, that's a valiant performance by Washington. And that could go the other way. And if Washington wins it, that already makes their season a success. As if it wasn't already by winning the division. I don't care about the record. Winning is still a big deal, going 7-9. If they somehow win just one playoff game, I think that puts them on a great path into next year moving forward. It's certainly a success in my book.
Yeah. I think we're definitely on the same wavelength, John, when it comes to the matchup and our prediction. I also think it's going to be a very close game. And you mentioned the idea of like the records and how people think it's going to be a blowout because of it. Bruce Arians even mentioned this earlier in the week that, you know, we're not really a 7-9 football team. We're a 5-1 football team when it comes to Alex Smith being the starting quarterback. And I think that's how us fans should look at this matchup on either side, right? The Tampa Bay side or the Washington side. I do think that Washington will lose this matchup as well. And I think, again, it will be very close, about 24-20. And I believe that Antonio Brown, you know, he's been getting an uptick in targets the last couple of weeks. And I think that Brady will actually find him for a game-winning touchdown. And, you know, it would still a disappointing playoff finish for us, but not a disappointing season by any means. A lot of people did not expect us to be here. I know many of us predicted 6 or 7 wins on the season, but getting to the playoffs, that's a big deal for a very young team. You need that. You really do. You need them to taste at least that playoff atmosphere. And it's going to be important for us, again, when we're potentially in contention for a Super Bowl in the next couple of years. But off the matchup, you know, John sort of going in your alley a little bit, and all of ours, really. We're going to talk about the NFL playoffs and talk about some very good matchups that we have this weekend. An action-filled weekend, I believe 6 games on Saturday and Sunday in total. And I was wondering, what are you guys most looking forward to watching outside of the Washington matchup this weekend? And do you see any upsets potentially brewing either in the Washington matchup, which I think we sort of finished a little bit talking about that, but or any other matchup that we have on Saturday or Sunday?
I'll let you take it, John.
All right. People know me. I'm from Chicago. I firmly believe there is an opportunity for the Bears to take down New Orleans. And you can call me crazy. I firmly believe there's a path to victory for Chicago. That's the game I'm going to be watching, obviously. Look, Mitchell Trubisky, say what you want. I don't think he's that bad of a quarterback. I think he's league average with the potential to be above average. That's been my take all year. And ironically enough, it's an Alex Smith scenario. The Bears somehow win with him. No one wants to give him credit for it because no one likes Mitch and people think he's not a franchise quarterback. Be whatever that might be. They win with Mitch Trubisky. They're going to face the Saints team that they lost to in overtime earlier this year. Now, I know Nick Foles was the quarterback, but he didn't play that well in that game. And I think the Bears actually, he was part of the reason why they lost that game. Look, they're going to be away. Okay, they're going to be in New Orleans. Drew Brees cannot throw the ball past 10 yards. He's old. He wants to retire. We all know he has the pish-posh NBC job lined up. And, you know, when I interview players on my show, they always tell me, the minute in which I started thinking about retirement, I already retired. I was done. So Drew Brees knows, oh, I got this great job coming up. You know, it's my last run. We'll see how it goes. He already missed significant amounts of time because of his rib injuries. There is a way for the Bears to win. Drew Brees is heavily reliant on the gadget guys around him. He needs Taysom Hill, needs Alvin Kamara, needs Michael Thomas, needs Emmanuel Sanders, even to an extent. If the Bears could somehow lock that down, if they make sure Alvin Kamara is not going to go run crazy for 6 touchdowns, and they limit Drew Brees to 5 to 10 yard passes, if they make sure that he makes mistakes downfield, should he try to go downfield, there is a path to victory for them. As long as Mitch Trubisky does what he does, which is, again, similar to Alex Smith, 5 to 10 yard passes, lots of balls thrown near the line of scrimmage or within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, I think they can end up winning that game. So that's the one I'm watching, and call me crazy, but there could be an upset there. You heard it here first.
I am with you, John. First of all, anybody that knows me, has watched my show for any amount of time, knows I'm a Mitchell Trubisky apologist. That's my guy. I've always loved me some Mitchell.
You're my guy, man.
So I've always tried to explain to people that Mitchell Trubisky isn't as bad as you think he is. First of all, I'm not a Matt Nagy guy. I'm just not. I haven't been a Matt Nagy guy. I didn't like the way he handled adversity last year when it hit. He was looking around, pointing fingers and getting aggressive. And I thought he felt like, that first year, it was a lot of Mitchell Trubisky using his legs and, kind of gadget plays here and there. And I thought he really said, I'm going to put my stamp on this offense this year. We're going to throw it a lot more. I'm going to put a lot more on Mitchell. And that's not what Mitchell Trubisky is. All right. He needs to use his legs. That's why he has them at his disposal. That's part of who he is. That's why the Bears play better when he's in there, because you're not reliant on a drop back passer on 3rd and 7. Mitchell take off for 8 and move the sticks. And so I feel like this Bears team has always been better off with him in the lineup. Every now and again, you like the Minnesota game the second time around in the end zone, you're like, no, Mitch, don't do that. But that's my guy. I'm like, you can win with Mitchell Trubisky. I've told people, and I got a lot of flack for this with Washington fans. I said, I'll take Mitchell Trubisky 10 times out of 10 over Dwayne Haskins any day, and they used to kill me for it because I'm a Mitchell Trubisky guy. But that being said, for me, I think it's going to come down because I do. And another thing that I want to clarify, because I've heard this too many times, and this is as false of a narrative as you will get, that the Bears don't have talent. Like, I was listening to the Monday night telecast on offense, and Louis Riddick, and they don't have as many weapons, or the Rams game when they got shut down. Like, are you kidding me? Look, Mooney is talented. I think that Anthony Miller doesn't get enough targets. He's talented. He's inconsistent, but he's talented. I love Cordero Patterson. They're missing Tariq Cohen. And, oh, by the way, Allen Robinson is one of the most reliable number one wide receivers in the league. So
we should go after him.
Jimmy Graham has been coming on of late. And I love their rookie tight end, Cole Kmet. Like I said, there's talent everywhere. And I was a David Montgomery guy coming out of Iowa State. So there's talent everywhere. Don't talk to me about lack of talent on this football team, because they have talent. Now, if you want to talk about the offensive line, it can be skittish up and down. I get that. But this is a talented football team. So don't talk to me about lack of talent. But when you take it to the defensive side of the football, for me, what's going to be the difference? This defense is never the same when Akeem Hicks is in the middle. When he's in the middle of this defense, they're a totally different animal. I look at that Monday night game against the Vikings the first time around. When he left that game, everything changed. They weren't the same defense. They weren't getting after Kirk as much. Dalvin Cook started to find some creases in the middle of that defense. They're not the same. When he's right, those guys are savages. They didn't necessarily get what they thought they were going to get out of Quinn this season. He's been a bit of a disappointment, but still got Khalil Mack, still got those linebackers that can run around and make some plays, Roquan Smith and all of those guys. I think where the key is going to be is, can they get interior pressure on Drew Brees? We all know that he's on his tippy toes trying to look over the line of scrimmage. If you get the pressure off the edge, he'll just step up. That's why they always spend so many resources on their from guard to guard to make sure that the pocket integrity is kept. So if they can get interior pressure and he can't step up, that's when Khalil Mack and those guys will eat off the edge. I think if you're the Bears, you have to keep everything in front of you. No cheapies, nothing cheap, nothing deep. Make them earn it, because what the Saints have turned into is a nickel and dime offense. And John alluded to this. Drew Brees isn't pushing it 35 yards down the field. This is 3rd and 3. They're looking for a 6-yard completion to move the sticks. So if you keep it in front of them, you get a batted ball on 2nd and 7, and now they're in 3rd and 7, and you get to Brees, and he's got to get rid of it before he wants to. You're forcing a punt, or you might be forcing them into a mistake. So to me, I think the key is, as John alluded to, stopping the run. Kamara can't, and also Oh, Latavius Murray too. Those two guys are really effective. If you can limit their production, force Drew Brees. And I never thought I would say this. Same thing I'm saying about Brady this week. I never thought I would say force Tom Brady to beat you. Force Drew Brees to beat you. I think you're going to have a shot in Chicago. I personally think that's a game that the Bears can go. And we've seen this Saints team struggle at home, away. It doesn't matter in the postseason. They're not averse to taking a loss.
Always underachieve.
So I like that matchup for the Bears a lot.
You know what Drew Brees reminds me of? He reminds me of Peyton Manning in his last year with Denver. 9 touchdowns, 18 picks. They won because their defense absolutely carried. Peyton Manning, if anything, was a detriment to that team. They could have had anybody under center. They probably would have won more convincingly that year. Drew Brees is that to me. Now, I know the numbers don't suggest it, but Drew Brees is not who he was 10 years ago. And I would argue he's more of a detriment, or he's average. He doesn't necessarily affect the game as much as people think. They look at the name and they say, oh, my goodness, Drew Brees. They forget to recognize that the guy's nearly 40 and he's going to be retiring, and he has no motivation whatsoever to do what he did 10 years ago, winning a Super Bowl, being a perennial MVP candidate. So that needs to be mentioned too. Don't just look at the name and say, oh my gosh, he's a great quarterback. Remember the situation. Remember how old he is. And remember that at the end of the year, he's definitely gone, and he's going to take his pish-posh TV job and be done with it. That's a mental part of the game that people need to consider and keep in mind.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you guys. The Bears are definitely looking for the upset, and I think they have a very good chance of upsetting the Saints. Both of you guys mentioned this. The Saints really underperform in the playoffs. They always seem to underachieve. Seems like every year we have them as a legit Super Bowl contender, and then they just fall flat every single year. A couple years it's against the Vikings, and a couple years it's against other teams. But regardless of the teams, they just seem to fall flat. I don't know what it is with them. Maybe it's just Sean Payton not really living up to the moment, or Drew Brees, throwing a couple interceptions that we don't typically see in the regular season. But I definitely agree that the Saints do underachieve. I do also want to point out, though, it's crazy that I'm saying this, but I guess I'm going against the grain when I say this, but I am not one of the Mitchell Trubisky apologists. I am very much on the bandwagon that, I'll just tell you, the extent of this. I don't even call him Mitchell Trubisky anymore. I actually call him Mitch Liebisky because of the fact that I just think it's a lie. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky's days in Chicago, if they were to actually build a legit Super Bowl contending team, I don't think he should stay in Chicago for too much longer. Maybe as a backup, but not as a starting quarterback. I think they definitely need to look at the position. It's tough. They're very their salary cap situation is not too hot in Chicago. I get that. I really do. And quarterback options might not be the best, when it comes to maybe a young quarterback in the draft when you're picking at pick 19, 20 for the Bears. But I think they definitely need to shore up that quarterback position. Trubisky is just not it, in my opinion. And I think if they do end up trotting out Mitchell Trubisky as a starting quarterback for another year, I think they're going to find themselves in the same situation that they were in at the beginning of the year, deciding whether to bench Trubisky when it's all said and done. I also think, we talked about how Trubisky, the last month of the season, he definitely showed some things. I definitely agree with you guys. I definitely think he showed a lot of good things, but at the same time, you also have to look at the matchups. And I know, John, you brought up earlier the comparison between Trubisky and Alex Smith, but I do want to say that Smith at least showed up in a very pivotal matchup against the Steelers, a very, 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 very solid defense in the Steelers, and did put up some points for us. And I just think I would rather have Alex Smith than Mitchell Trubisky at this point. But that's not really saying much because I'm not really a Smith fan either. So I'm just taking the better of the two options at this point. I know, John, you do want to dive into the Bears part that I mentioned, but I do want to say another sneaky matchup, another matchup that a lot of people don't think really gives you the upset potentially because of all the COVID cases that are happening right now in Cleveland. I think the Browns could actually still, and I'm in the same boat as Max Kellerman, still actually upset the Steelers. I just am not a fan of the Steelers offense. We saw the Steelers up close and personal when they played the Washington football team, and they haven't really changed much. They lost last week, albeit it was Mason Rudolph at the starting quarterback position and not Big Ben. But I think the Browns, they can still run the ball. I know they won't have Batonio, right? Arguably their best offensive lineman, but they still have a guy like Jedrick Wills. They still have some talent on that offensive line. And Jarvis Landry was back last week, which is a big addition to that team. And I think with a guy like Nick Chubb, a guy like Kareem Hunt, their defense isn't too shabby. They have a guy like Myles Garrett, obviously. I think they could actually upset the Steelers. I think they could.
I was going to bring up those two family business matchups, Rams and Seahawks and Browns and Steelers. So I'll piggyback off of you for a second and go to Cleveland and the Steelers. And I'm just telling you that I'm amazed at the whole situation, the whole COVID situation in Cleveland. Like I did the podcast today, and I'm like, this is not the time for this. You know what I mean? Is this not the most Cleveland Browns thing ever? Like, who else could this happen to?
Yeah.
You know, you wait this long to get to the postseason. You finally get there. You find a guy that can take you there, and he gets COVID. But anyway, I think that it's going to be a really fascinating game because I don't think anybody right now has confidence in the Steelers offense. And how could you? The last time we saw Ben in this offense, they were getting trounced by the Colts. And I still can't wrap my brain around how they came back and won that game. But they somehow did. I thought that they needed the reps in week 17. Personally, myself, like I didn't think they were in a position. Ben's 87 years old. You know what I mean? Like he needed the time off. He was, dealing with all kinds of ailments. So I get why they gave him the week off. But that offense is, kind of everyone's figured it out. They can't run the football. The short passing game is an extension of the run game for them, and everybody's just kind of packing it in. And they can't hit those deep shots like they were earlier in the season. With their rookie wide receiver and some of the bigger plays with Deontay Johnson and some of those guys. They can't hit those big plays and stretch the field vertically. They're going to be in trouble. The defense isn't what it was earlier. That loss of Bud Dupree, I don't think a lot of people understand. Bud Dupree,
big loss.
How big of a loss that was. And then they had some injuries at the linebacker position. Robert Spillane got injured. And so they're trying to figure some things out defensively. They're still a really good defense, okay? If they can't slow down the run game, because to me, I still think Baker Mayfield is highly dependent on the run game. And so if they can slow that down, they're going to have a chance of really winning this football game just off the strength of their defense. But if they can't slow down Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and because none of their receivers scare me. I'm sorry. Personally, their receivers are cool, but none of them scare me vertically. Donovan Peoples-Jones has had a really good season for a rookie, and some of their other guys. Jarvis Landry doesn't stretch the football field vertically. They got some really, really good tight ends, but everything is short to intermediate for me with them, and that's fine because Baker does a good job of play action fake and finding the holes in the zone. But if you can slow down their run game and put the onus on Baker to beat you, I think the Steelers have a really good shot at winning that football game as long as they're able to sustain offense. And don't forget, they lost their pass rusher, Olivier Vernon, who tore his Achilles on Sunday against the Steelers in that game. And he was having a hell of a season despite missing half of the year. He had 9 sacks, and now he's done for the season. So that's a big loss for them defensively as well.
I have a good friend who's a big Steelers fan. And before the year, I said, I don't know about the Steelers, man. I really don't know what they're going to bring to the table. He told me, John, you're crazy. You're wrong. And they go out, 11-0, 12-0, and I look like an idiot. But now, these past couple of games, I'm starting to look like the genius here because you know what? Nothing on this team's offense scares me one bit. Big Ben is old, okay? He's coming off of elbow surgery, and the guy couldn't even throw for 4,000 yards. The argument that I hear from Steelers fans is that, he led the league in passing 2 years ago. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. He had elbow surgery. Now the guy can't even pass for 4,000 yards. 10 picks, way too many. 93 passer rating, not good enough for Big Ben. For Big Ben standards, that's nothing compared to what he usually is. Offensively, they can't run the football. James Conner's been a complete bust. You can say what you want. He's been a bust. Last year, I wasn't sold on the guy. I get he rushed for 1,000 yards, but that happens when you get 400 carries. Okay? After that, they have nothing there. And then receiving-wise, I understand Claypool had a good year, but what happened to Juju? Juju Smith-Schuster is supposed to be a big thing. He was supposed to be the right replacement for Antonio Brown. That's why they let him go and said, Antonio, you're too much of a head case. Get the hell out of here. We have somebody better. Well, that didn't really turn out to be the case now, did it? So I definitely think, even despite this COVID situation, there is a good opportunity for Cleveland to go in and just take them down. And remember, this is a divisional matchup. They know each other very well. This is not, AFC West versus AFC East. These guys face each other twice a year as it is. They just faced each other last week. There is a good opportunity, even with Big Ben in, that Cleveland could go in and take them down. I could see it. Just
for the record, the Steelers are going to win the game. I just want you to know that.
Okay.
I made a case for Cleveland.
Yeah.
They're not going to beat the Steelers. I just don't see that.
Okay. Do you think the Bears will beat the Saints though, or do you think it's the Saints?
I'm still mulling over that one because I really want to pick the Bears. I really do. I'm going to sit down and think a little bit more about that one. I haven't made a definitive decision one way or the other. If you're asking for some upsets, that's one, and I could see the Rams, and that was the other family business matchup that I talked about this on my podcast. My dad, me and him were talking, and he was like, "Man, that rookie quarterback for the Rams, that young guy, man, he looked good." I'm like, "John Wofford?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, I didn't watch it because the Packers and the Bears game was on Fox, and they blacked it out. I couldn't put it on my computer, so they blacked it out because that the other game, the Rams and Cardinals, was on CBS. I'm like, I'm not turning away from Bears Packers. Are you crazy? So I couldn't watch the game, and it was 18-7, and Kyler got hurt in the first. I'm like, I'm not going back and watching that. Whatever. So my dad's like, "Yo, I'm telling you, this guy didn't look too bad." So I went back and watched it today, and lo and behold, John Wofford didn't look that bad. He ran for almost 70 yards. He threw for 250 or 230 yards or whatever it was, and accounted for almost 290 yards of offense. And I thought as the game wore on, his first pass was a pick. It was not pretty. But after that, he settled in, and you could see Sean McVay opening up the playbook with him. And they can do some things with him they can't do with Jared Goff. Obviously, it's a different guy you have to prepare for because he can use his legs. And so there was a lot of read option. There were a lot of quarterback keeps. And I'm like, And he threw it well. I'm like, okay. With this defense, and again, it's family business, so they know each other better than anybody else would. So with this defense, and it's the best in football, regardless of conference, it's the best in football. And they always give Russell Wilson fits.
Yeah.
If Wofford doesn't turn it over, and this is a stat that I was blown by, the Rams have turned it over in every single game this year. Like, you know how hard it is to do that? Like, even the worst teams in the league have a game or two where they don't turn it over. Yeah. You might have, a 5 turnover game. We've had 2 of them this season, You may have a 5 turnover game, but you're going to be clean in one game. They haven't been clean in any of them. But if they can somehow take care of the football, and with this guy just managing the game and this defense, I'm telling you, man, I would not count out the Los Angeles Rams on Saturday afternoon. I would not do that if I were you.
And remember, their run game, they got 3 different running backs averaging 4 or more yards per carry. And, I know the issue is, they don't have a definitive guy. That's a fantasy football issue. In real games, that does make a difference. When you've got 4 different guys who could run the football, you could carve up and go here and there in the Seattle defense. Seattle relies solely on Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson is a bad game, he has a couple of interceptions, they're going to lose, unfortunately. And that's not Russell Wilson's fault. That's an indictment on Seattle not giving him anything to work with besides the quarterback himself. So there is a possibility there, too. I totally agree, where as long as the Rams don't turn the ball over, stick to the ground, let Wolford throw the ball a bit here and find ways, there's also a possibility there for an upset, no question.
Yep. Also, I think the big X factor in that game that we haven't talked about yet is Cooper Kupp actually being activated off the COVID reserve list, and another offensive weapon maybe to help out that young quarterback. You guys might be right, and the Rams might upset the Seahawks.
It could happen. It could definitely happen. I mean, another intriguing matchup: Colts and Bills. I know everybody's on the Bills right now, and I get it. First of all, Josh Allen is my guy, and you guys know that. That's the guy that I wanted. I swore by Allen coming out of Wyoming.
Mhm.
People thought I was crazy,
Mhm.
even after the first year. No accuracy, this, that. You can't fix accuracy. I said, okay, fine, we'll see. And we see what this guy is morphed into. This offense has it on tilt right now. I venture to say that they're scarier than the Chiefs on offense right now. But that being said, if there is a matchup in Wild Card Weekend that was the perfect matchup, it's the best defense in the AFC in the Indianapolis Colts against the best offense right now, at least in the AFC in the Buffalo Bills. I don't think that the Colts are going to be able to slow them down enough to win the game, but I think it's going to be very interesting. I don't think this is going to be what we've seen from the Bills where they're just putting up 40 plus on everybody. I think this thing is 56 last week. That's an NFL high this season. Okay. I mean, and they did some of that with Matt Barkley. He's coming in throwing dimes 50 yards down the field. Like, that's how good they're playing right now.
Dolphins defense wasn't too shabby, too.
They looked the best scoring defense in the league going into that game. So, I mean, that's where the Bills are right now, you know. And they signed Kenny Stills, and they got him on ice just in case.
Embarrassment of riches.
This is going to be a fun game because Matt Eberflus, I think, should be getting consideration for a head coaching job this offseason. And he's got that defense playing ball, and they're going to limit the explosiveness because they play that cover 2 shell, keep everything in front of you. So those explosive plays that Josh Allen likes to create, only way he's going to get them is if he creates off schedule and things break down. But I think they're going to make this a much slower paced game. And with the running game now with Jonathan Taylor, who's heating up, okay, they're going to try to shorten the game a bit and give them a chance. I've always said with Phillip Rivers, which Phillip are we getting? Are we getting good Phillip? Are we getting bad Phillip? Okay, if you get good Phillip, they're going to have a chance. If you get bad Phillip, he could be 1 foot out the door. You know, and just like we talked about with Drew Brees, I think Phillip is already kind of contemplating retirement as well. So that's another factor to add in there. You know, we were already having conversations about if they don't clinch, is this it for Phillip Rivers? So I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I think every one of these matchups has a chance to be really intriguing games. I don't know if any of these games get away from us, honestly speaking. I think, you know, at the end, maybe a team scores another, you know, late touchdown or so to push the score out to make it look a little bit more convincing. But I think in the fourth quarter of every one of these games, I think we could go in with a competitive ball game where anything could happen on either side. I really think that these games are really evenly matched between all of these teams.
I do want to say before giving you guys the last question, I want to again shout out all the people in the chat: B Nizzle, Nathan, J Mart, Protect Sports, Juan Gotti on the in the chat right now, DeMarco, K-Man, everybody. Thank you guys so much for all the support. I see Paul's comment about Washington football team winning because Sis Tom playing the Tampa Bay way, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. I don't know about that. I don't know if we're gonna force that many turnovers off of Brady, but
nah.
Yeah, I think he still has a lot left in that.
When's the last time Tom Brady's thrown 3 picks in a game? Seriously, what are we talking about?
There you go.
When the Saints picked him off twice, we were like, wait a minute, what is this? Who's this guy?
Foreign to us. Yeah.
No way he's throwing 3 picks in a game.
Yeah, definitely agree. With the last question of the night, I do want to ask you guys, who are some teams that can really make a run at the Lombardi Trophy this year? You can give me a handful of teams, maybe just 2 or 3. It's up to you guys. And who do you actually have as your NFC representative and AFC representative in the Super Bowl? And maybe, I know it's early, but it's all in good fun. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year?
So my prediction before the season started was Seattle and Kansas City. So I'm just going to stick with that. Okay. Now, and again, as John pointed out, they are so heavily reliant upon Russell Wilson. I thought the defense would be better. They've gotten better of late, but I don't know if I necessarily trust them or not. But that's the prediction I made, so I'm going to stick to it. I could easily see Green Bay advancing in the NFC as well. I've already said this a million times on all my platforms, on all my shows. The NFC is wide open, okay? Yeah. The NFC is wide open. Anybody can beat anybody. We just talked about the Bears beating the Saints. That can happen, okay? Anybody can beat Green Bay. Minnesota beat Green Bay. I get it, it's family business, but anybody can beat anybody in this conference. So nothing's out of bounds. If you told me right now that somehow Chicago was in the NFC Championship game, I could believe it. I mean, you catch a team on the wrong day. This is not the NBA. This is not the NHL or, Major League Baseball where the best team usually wins, especially basketball in the NBA where the best team always wins. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is show up and play better than the team that might be better than you one time. And so for me, a couple of sleepers would be I think the Ravens. I personally, at some point, Lamar is going to win a playoff game. They're going to beat the Titans. There's no doubt in my mind that they're going to beat the Titans because the Titans defensively stink. They are just abhorrent on defense. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to beat them in wild card weekend. Lamar's going to get a taste of what it's like to win a playoff game, and who knows what that's going to do for him moving forward. But the Bills definitely, I don't think they're a sleeper at this point. I think everybody is kind of hip to what they're doing. They're a dangerous team. Indianapolis, if they somehow get past Buffalo, they're dangerous because of their defense. Same thing with the Rams. If you can play defense and run the ball, and John told you, the Rams have 3 different guys rushing for 4 yards or more this season. You can run the football. You can play some defense. You can win in January. So the Colts are running the football as well as anybody right now. They play sound defense. It's going to be tough to get past Buffalo in Buffalo, but there's some teams that are really scary because of what they can do on the defensive side of the football. And that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. I don't bet against Rodgers. I don't bet against Russell Wilson. And that's why I think those two, when it's all said and done, are probably going to represent the NFC in the championship game.
Okay. Louis, you made a couple of great points there. First of all, I fully agree. The NFC is completely wide open. Mm-hmm. Every single team definitely has a flaw that's worth expounding upon, and that could end up hurting them in a playoff game. I think the Packers are going to represent the NFC, though. I think I hate to put it this way, but they are the most complete team out of every other team. They have a hell of a wide receiver. They got a good run game. They have Aaron Rodgers, who has a proven postseason record. In the AFC, I'm actually going to go with the Bills. The Chiefs have not impressed me these past couple of weeks, and I've been very worried about how well they can do in the playoffs and how they've been just completely coming downhill. Patrick Mahomes has come down to earth, and people don't talk about it, especially here in Chicago, because they want to perpetuate the Mitch Sutton narrative. But Patrick Mahomes has not had himself a flattering couple of games, especially as the season ended. I think it could be Bills and Packers in the Super Bowl. We'll see how it all plays out. If that game were to happen, I think the Packers may win it by a nose, maybe, a 4-point win. I mean, these are, of course, very early, and I'm probably going to be wrong. At the beginning of the season, I thought the Ravens were going to win the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. And I think this season proved to us that they have a lot of issues. They need more help for Lamar Jackson, and they obviously have not addressed that. Wide receivers. And you know what? Running backs, too, even to an extent. I know Dobbins had a good year for touchdowns-wise, but he didn't have a lot of yards. You need to let the guy run a bit more, give him 250 carries, see if he can get to 1,000 and average 4 yards per carry. I want him to be a workhorse, not have, a three-headed monster over there. They don't need that. But I digress from that point. I think it'll be Bills and Packers. I think the Packers will barely win it. Then again, though, we'll see. As Louis said, the NFC is completely wide open. And in the AFC, you have a couple of teams where if they could somehow win, if they could upset week 1 here in the wild card round, there's a possibility for them to make a run, especially the Colts. I mean, the Colts, I watched the Colts play the Bears, and granted, Nick Foles was the quarterback, and I'm not a fan of Nick Foles, but the Bears only put up 3 points through the first 3.5 quarters. They didn't score until garbage time, and that was just horrible and sickening to watch. I could see them doing that to any other team in this playoff bracket right now. So we'll have to see. Who knows?
Yeah. I'll say I'm gonna do a little bit different thing than Louis is doing right now, and I actually had the Chiefs versus the Saints as my preseason prediction. But now I'm probably gonna go with Chiefs versus Packers. For many reasons. I do want to get to first the teams that I think will be in legit contention for the Super Bowl this year. It sucks because I think outside of Washington, of course, I'm rooting for the Bills the most to win the Super Bowl this year. I love the Bills. I'm in the same boat that Louis is in. I love Josh Allen. John knows as well. I've been high on him from the very beginning. Again, the accuracy issues, people like to point that out. First year, coming into the league, and he's definitely shored that up, and he's become a bona fide MVP candidate this year. I get it. Stephon Diggs has a lot to do with that, but The Bills' offense is humming, and their defense, a lot of people don't really realize this, but I mean, it's top half at least, if not top 10-ish. Like, it's in that range where, as a playoff team, that could be the difference between you potentially winning a Super Bowl or you not winning a Super Bowl. I'll just say this, though. John brought up the fact that the Chiefs aren't looking too good right now, specifically Patrick Mahomes, and maybe that might be a reason why the Chiefs won't make it to the Super Bowl once again. But I do want to point out that last year, the Chiefs' offense wasn't necessarily humming going into the playoffs. I get it that Patrick Mahomes was injured for a good part of the season, but, I mean, they weren't really looking too spectacular, right, until the playoffs hit. And then that's when Patrick Mahomes reminded the world that he is Patrick Mahomes, that he is the arguably the best football player, if not the best football player in the entire world. And I think he'll probably do somewhat similar of a thing this year. And I think ultimately the Chiefs will have enough. They have enough offensive firepower. They have a Travis Kelce. They have a Tyreek Hill. They have Le'Veon Bell. I'm not sure if Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be back, but I think they'll do just fine with Bell at the running back position. Their defense, might not be the best defense, but they've been very solid against the run. They have solid playmakers across that defense, right? And Tyrann Mathieu. They have some good secondary pieces as well. And I think the Chiefs will find a way. And then in the NFC, like you guys said, pretty much wide open. Any team can make it. Even, slim chance, Washington football team, slim chance. But
and they got a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance.
There's a chance. The champ is here. The champ is here, Louis T. But I think at the end of the day, the Packers, like John said, he hit the nail on its head. They are the most complete team, in my opinion, in the NFC, right? I would say the Saints are, but Drew Brees hasn't been too spectacular this year. He's definitely shown that he's regressed. I wouldn't necessarily compare him to Peyton Manning this last year because I don't think Brees has gotten to the point where he is a negative on his team rather than a positive. I think he's still been producing, still been throwing touchdowns. I mean, last week he had 3 touchdowns and didn't put up too many yards, but I think the Saints should be up there. But Packers, man, they got that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. That bad man, Aaron Rodgers. I know Bears fans hate that, but I mean, they got him, and with him, you can win any game. You have a chance to make a run, and I know we've said that for years now, sort of in the same boat as the Saints, right? Always view them as a Super Bowl contender, the Packers and the Saints, but they always seem to underwhelm in the playoffs. But I think this year is different. The acquisition of that the young quarterback in the draft last year for the Packers definitely lit a fire underneath Aaron Rodgers' belly, and he's been on a tear this year. He's the MVP likely, and I think they have enough weapons. They have Devontae Adams. They have, a up-and-coming tight end, Robert Tonyan. They have very good running backs, Aaron Jones. They have the A.J. Dillon kid, right, who has been producing out of nowhere really the last couple of weeks. And their defense is top-notch. They have a very, very good, if not the best, cornerback in the league in Jair Alexander. Some very good pieces on that defense. So I think it's going to be Chiefs versus Packers. And ultimately, I think the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl.
Man, look, we never get what we want.
Yeah.
Never. And so that Super Bowl is too much like right. Okay. Who wouldn't want to see Mahomes versus Rodgers? That's what we all would sign up for.
Yeah.
But that's not what we usually get. Someone's going to crash the party. Someone's going to mess it up. I think the Chiefs are the safest bet because they know what time it is. They can kind of cruise through the regular season. I think they're a little bit better defensively this year than they were last year. So they don't have to be as dynamic offensively. Like last year, it was out of necessity. Look, we got to score 40 because defense probably going to give up 38. So they knew they had to be dynamic offensively. I don't think they have to be as dynamic this year offensively. I do believe that Mahomes has taken a step back slightly, but a step back, all that means is he's not out of the stratosphere now. He's immortal. He's mortal now. He was immortal at first. He's mortal, but he's still light years ahead of everybody else the way he's playing. Rodgers isn't that far away, but it's still take 5 steps, get to Rodgers, and then take 7 steps, and then you get to everybody else. And so when I look at the Chiefs, I think they're going to find a way to get to the Super Bowl. I still don't know about Green Bay. There's something that is uneasy about the Packers for me. I don't love their defense. I think you can run the football against their defense. And I do think that when it's all said and done, Easier said than done, and nobody seems to be able to do this for the life of me. I can't understand why. But if I'm playing Green Bay, it won't be Devontae Adams. I'm sorry. Somebody, hey, look, who else is going to beat me? Valdez Scantling, you feel like beating me today? You know, Alan Lazard, you feel like beating me today? It will not be Adams. Somehow he's got 11 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown. And I'm like, how in the world did you just let this? That's the only guy that can kill you, and you let him kill you anyway.
He's the real Ken Carter Mike.
He does all the dirty work in between the 20s, and then Tunyon gets the touchdown. He's got like 13 touchdowns. It's ridiculous. So I don't know. I don't bet against Rodgers, so I like their chances. But something is just this uneasy feeling in the pit of my gut that says somebody's going to knock those boys off.
Well, if you guys remember, from last year when the Packers made it, everyone said this is the worst playoff team in the NFC. Their record is so deceiving, and it turned out it was.
Yeah, it was House of Cards last year.
And it turned out it was. And who's to say it won't happen again this year? I mean, it's definitely possible. That said, I think, Aaron Rodgers obviously has turned it on to another level this year compared to last year. He's much better. Devontae Adams, much better. Aaron Jones, much better. Their offense in general has gone up, and I think that's what's going to help them. But I will say this. It would be very cool if we saw Mahomes and Rodgers. I mean, it'd be a State Farm Bowl, too. Wouldn't just be the Super Bowl. It'd be the State Farm Bowl. And I think at that point, it'd be very fun to watch, too. So we'll have to see.
Oh, yeah. It'd be awesome. And State Farm couldn't get enough spots on Super Bowl Sunday if that were to happen. I mean, they would be just dominating Super Bowl commercials. Yep. And I'll add to that what you just said. The only difference between this year and last year is there's no San Francisco 49ers. Like, we knew they couldn't beat them. We knew it. We had already seen it in the regular season. They were too soft. The 49ers are going to pound it down their throats. There's nobody there in their way. You know, theoretically speaking, of course. There's nobody in their way that we look at and say, hey, they can't beat them. So that's the only reason why I say, hey, I could see Aaron Rodgers putting his team on his back and saying, all right, we're going to the Super Bowl this year. So we'll see what happens. So I'm sticking with Russell Wilson in the Seattle Seahawks stuff because that's what I think.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I did say that was gonna be the last question, but Juan keeps posting this in the chat. But what do you guys make of Brady's tweet saying that I'll put it up here that his bedtime is at 8:30 and he's 1-3 this year on prime time? He's normally asleep by PM. Do you make any sense? Do you think that's gonna really matter in this matchup versus Washington? I mean, I don't, but go ahead.
He's covering. He's covering because the guy can't win in prime time. That's why. That's the biggest BS excuse I've ever heard. You know what? Yeah. You have to find a way. These guys are paid millions upon millions of dollars. They play 6 months out of the year. You're going to tell me, oh, because I didn't go to bed on time, I can't win a football game, or I can't win in prime time because I didn't go to bed at the right time. That's actually the most soft thing I've ever seen. I didn't see that tweet until now. That's ridiculous. Give me a break.
Look, Tom Brady, he's trolling. He's the funniest guy in the league right now.
He can do that when he has 6 rings.
He's been doing this all year long. He's been tweeting out. Remember when he had the snafu, the 4th down, thing? Like, what thought it was 3rd down? He didn't know what down it was, and he made a joke about it. When LeBron and them, won this championship. So, this is what Brady does. He's heard this all week long. Oh, they're 1-3, so he's making light of it. It's funny to him, and he's he's going to use that as motivation, and he's making light of the situation. Look, he knows what time it is, and they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready, and I expect to get the best that they have to offer. And if we're not ready, we will get trampled. Trust me.
Definitely agree. Yeah, it should be a fun matchup. Once again, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer than I promised. So want to give one last shout out to everyone in the chat. K-Man, I appreciate it. We will keep it up with more streams on the channel. And if only the Wizards could be good too. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. But we'll see about that. We'll see. Tobin, thank you for stopping by. Juan Gotti once again. And yeah, this was a fun stream, guys. Probably up there with the best streams of this short, career of making streams on this channel and stuff. And I appreciate it.
Let's just say it was the best stream of 2021 for you.
Yeah. I just didn't want to put anybody under the bus or anything.
Let's just go with that one.
For sure. So thank you guys once again for joining. I think I already did put your guys' channels in the description, but if not, I will make sure to do that. Make sure you guys go sub up both of their channels, Louis T and John Z Sports of Sports Talk Chicago. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching. And it should be a very, very fun weekend. Very fun football weekend. We got a lot of good matchups. Hopefully Washington can come away with the W. Hopefully Chicago can come away with the W. And maybe Washington football team versus Chicago in the playoffs. I don't know.
Bart Scott.
Yeah.